guiding saint for
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said you are our guiding saint for
Oh,
giving us the text of the whole poem Acid, all that greeny flower. You're
oh,
amazing.
I'm glad
Um,
that worked.
yeah, well, yeah. So I need a vote. Does everybody want to carry over to next time and talk about parts two, three, and four of Asphodel after you have a chance to read them?
Yeah. Sure.
I vote
Yes,
yes,
you're
although I'm
cool
not
with
going to be
that?
able to be here in person. I'll get the recording, but I will look
Oh yeah,
forward to it.
that's true. You won't be. You're going someplace. Yeah.
Just next week, next Tuesday. I'll be back after
Right.
that.
Okay. 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 Um, Julia can't be here today, and I'm not sure about Leslie, but anyway, we'll get started. So how's everybody?
Good.
Pretty good? You holding up with William Carlos Williams?
Oh, yeah.
Good. Yeah, he's pretty wonderful. Um, Peter pointed out to me many times over the years that Williams is not the best at consecutive reasoning, you know? And so as I was rereading Asphodel this morning, I realized that there are times when you couldn't exactly say there's a logical argument going on. Sometimes there are things that you might want to question or things that you just sort of have to make almost like a leap of faith into the next stage of the poem. So I suggest that we read this poem like waves of the sea. The triadic line is a form that is a wave-like form, deliberately so. And, as I said, partly Williams created it so that he could keep track of where he was on the page, but the reasons are deeper than that. He wanted a line that could open endlessly and be constantly changing and yet constantly returning. So repetition and variation, He didn't want a line that was just simply marching down the page with a left justified margin, which is how many poems are. That's sort of the convention for poetry. And he also didn't really want a line that was radically dispersed all over the page, although he did play with that some, like in Patterson. And I found a draft page that I really love. It's like these names of flowers scattered all over a page, and that's all it is. And it's sort of like a field of like a medieval. If you could represent that visually, it would be like a Millefleur painting. But in general, this triadic line, three is a magic number. It's a number of completion and it's a number of return. So we keep going with it. It's not absolutely regular. What he does vary is the length of the line. So that keeps it open too. There's a kind of measure to it. He talks a lot about measure in his late years of writing poetry, that he wants to work with a kind of measure. So it's not absolutely regular. The lines vary in length from one syllable to 12 or more, you know? And it doesn't always form a strict triadic pattern. There are some lines that are indented the same way twice in a row or not indented twice in a row. But in general, this is the pattern of the last decade or so of his writing life, except for the poems in Pictures from Bruegel that we talked about last time. Those are left justified. Those are free verse, short poems. So he still is experimenting a lot, playing a lot, writing. And he hated to see the end of his writing life come. He hated for that to be something that lay ahead of him. There's a really moving story that I read once. Flossie happened to be standing by the back door, and Williams came, moving really slowly toward the back door, carrying a bunch of papers. And she said, "What is that, Bill?" And it turned out he was on his way to go throw away some of his poems. It's like he wasn't really completely in control of what he was doing, and she managed to rescue those. But there's a lot. There's a lot. And if you want to do research on Williams, go to Yale, go to Buffalo. There's something like 40,000 pages of archives, you know. I'll tell you my story when I learned something so important about poetry, the kind of thing that you can never learn unless it just happens to you. When I was in grad school, I discovered in a footnote that there was this poem called Philip and Orody, which was like a really, really early imitation Keats and Endymion poem. And I talked about it. It eventually became that poem, The Wanderer, when he completely picked it up and shook it around and rewrote it in a different voice with a different plot, But I wanted to, I was writing on William Carlos Williams and autobiography. And so I thought, okay, this is going to be a kind of, veiled autobiography of the young poet. And I learned from this footnote that this was in the archives at Yale. So my blessed Bill Spangam, my professor, managed to get me a research grant to travel to Yale and do a couple of weeks of research at the Beinecke. I knew nothing about grants. I'm just like, oh, what? That exists. That's something you can do. So I went there, and if you go to the Beinecke, it's like a glass fishbowl. You have to sit there. You can only write in pencil. You can't just go wander around and look for things. You have to ask the librarian specifically for what you want. And so they go off into the deep bowels of the library and they, bring it back to you in this cardboard box. So I had asked for the drafts of Philip and Ority. And she brought back a box, and I opened it, and there's a poem called Adam, which is a poem that he wrote for his father. I hadn't requested this, it just happened to be on the top of the box. And it's in this great big handwriting because he wrote it already, when he was having some trouble with his vision. Excuse me. And I burst into tears because it's the first time I ever realized that poets actually write things in time on paper. Well, they used to on paper, and that they do that instead of, making a tuna fish sandwich or playing a game of softball or becoming a lawyer, that it actually exists in time and space in a room someplace. So that was sort of one of the most important things I ever learned about poetry is that it doesn't just descend on a filament of spider web from, the Empyrean full blown on the page, which is how I sort of always thought of poetry, that it actually gets created by people in time and space. And it was just so important for me to know that. So that's my little digression about William Carlos Williams and one of the most important things I ever learned about poetry.
But
And it's
Anne,
not that hard.
can it do that?
What, descend full blown?
Yes.
Yeah, if you're
Yes.
lucky. If you can buy the right kind of spider web
Has it ever happened to you?
that is descended full blown. That's
Yes.
my secret with Charlotte. I'll never tell.
There,
Yeah,
Okay.
there,
I'm
there.
big,
By the way,
humble.
there are some authors. I think Jamaica Kincaid says that it's all in her head, and then so in that sense, and then she just sits down and it's all written.
Yeah.
In
Well,
other
yeah,
words,
but that's different.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's sort of in that sense, it's not like you're there crossing out and redrafting, right? It's like she's all done all that redrafting. It's all done in the head.
Yeah, and that would be something that she might say, and that would not necessarily be absolutely true all the time. Do you know
That
what
would
I mean?
be true. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I
You
Well,
mean,
Wordsworth composed Tintern Abbey in his head
walking.
while he was finishing the walking tour that it's about. And he changed very little of it when he wrote it
Yeah,
down. And
Yeah.
I think you can trust him on that.
yeah,
He
Yeah.
wouldn't lie
sure,
about that. And you very likely can trust Jamaica Kincaid on that
sure. I
too.
mean,
Yeah.
Keats, the Ode to a Nightingale while I was taking a walk, you
No,
know?
so do you
longer.
your practice is generally to edit though quite a bit as you write
No,
or no?
no. It's sometimes one way, sometimes another way. Sometimes I'll just write a poem and there it is, you know? And I won't have been looking for it. It's like I'm just, something just happens. But sometimes I'll write a poem that takes, like I wrote a poem once that took 30 years from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Because I wrote one
Yeah.
stanza and then I got stuck. And then 30 years later, I figured out the second stanza. Um, no, it's just, it happens all kinds of different ways. Yeah. And you write lots of stuff that's like really bad. And then if you throw it away, maybe you look at it later and there's, like something you redo it, you fiddle with it, you turn it upside down, you save the good parts, you say, oh, okay, I can do this, this, this. You just arrange it on the page differently, whatever. Nah, there's all kinds of different ways it happens. Yeah, when I was doing, I mean, the book Mississippi, which thank you guys, those of you who have ordered a copy. I was delighted to mail them, so let me know when you get them. Those poems I didn't revise really. Those poems just kind of happened. They were like It's like I was taking dictation, you know, these crazy voices in my head. But other poems is different. Yeah. So let's talk about some of Williams's triadic line poems. Do you want to do screen sharing? Since it's the Christmas season, we'll start with The Gift. So it's a poem by a baby doctor.
You're muted, Tony.
Do you want to use Doug's scan? Is that what we're using?
No, we'll do the screen share of part 3 that I sent.
Oh, okay. Give me a second then. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
got Doug's thing up here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll do that later next time.
Okay. Well, and what are you looking for now?
The Gift. It's after Sonnet in Search of an Author.
I got it. I got it.
Okay,
Uh,
great, thank you.
okay. Sorry. I just
No
I
problem.
prepared Doug's thing, but not this. All
No, it's
right.
okay.
Okay. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
The Gift. As the wise men of old brought gifts guided by a star to the humble birthplace of the god of love, the devils, as an old print shows, retreated in confusion. What could a baby know of gold ornaments or frankincense and myrrh, of priestly robes and devout genuflections? But the imagination knows all stories before they are told, and knows the truth of this one past all defection. The rich gifts, so unsuitable for a child, though devoutly proffered, stood for all that love can bring. The men were old. How could they know of a mother's needs or a child's appetite? But as they kneeled, the child was fed. They saw it and gave praise. A miracle had taken place, hard gold to love, a mother's milk before their wandering eyes. The ass brayed, the cattle lowed. It was their nature. All men by their nature give praise. It is all they can do. The very devils by their flight give praise. What is death beside this? Nothing. The wise men came with gifts and bowed down to worship this perfection. So Williams, uh, his late poems are, I would call them in a sense religious. He's concerned with religious questions, but he's not doctrinal. Um, and he did not think of Mary as a virgin, he thought of Mary as a mother. So when he talks about the child, he's really talking about all babies. And when he talks about the mother, he's talking about all mothers. He realized that the Christian tradition singles out this one mother and this one baby, but he's not setting her up above or against ordinary human beings. So, he's referring to this ancient iconography of paintings of the wise men worshiping the baby in the manger and the wise men with their gifts. But he's asking himself or he's asking us in kind of realistic terms, human terms, what can a baby do with gold, frankincense, and myrrh? I mean, like, this isn't a teddy bear. This isn't a a gift for the mother exactly. It's not food, whatever. But he says, but they stand for all that love can bring, the act of giving, the act of offering, the act of, in a sense, adoring the child. And Williams talks in his autobiography about this magical moment when a baby is first born before, the silver nitrate is put in its eyes, before it has a name. I mean, here he is, he's delivered over 2,000 babies, and he says, just for an instant, this beautiful thing is released and flies around the room. Just for an instant, there's this miraculous moment of entry, as we saw in by the road to the contagious hospital. Uh, you know, they enter the new world naked, uncertain of all save that they enter, right? And so that's what he's talking about here. Um, and he's saying, in the iconography, the devils fly away, the wise men are there, the baby's there, the ass and the cattle. A miracle had taken place, hard gold to love, a mother's milk before their wondering eyes. And then he makes this leap that he's making over and over and over in the late poems, which are, um, you can't prove them logically. They're faith statements in a way. All men by their nature give praise. It is all they can do. The very devils by their flight give praise. What is death beside this? So these poems are very much concerned with death, with what can stand against death. What can we muster against death? What endures, even though death is the end of each individual life? And then in Acidyl, even bigger, what endures, even though our age seems given over to death, you know? So I don't know, do you guys read the New Yorker? Because there is a cartoon in this week's New Yorker that I have fallen in love with. It's the wise men, and it's this manger, and it's this little baby holding a shiny ball. And there's another baby, another little baby standing next to the manger. And then there's a whole line of babies filing out of the manger. And the caption is like, sort of like you give one of them a present, they all want one. It just cracked me up. I just absolutely love it. So if you can see the New Yorker, look for it. So any comments on this poem?
Yeah. By the way, uh, regarding that cartoon, there's also a meme on the internet right now with the manger being empty because
Yeah,
uh, Trump is in charge and there are no immigrants, there are no poor people.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway, uh, getting back to the poem, a couple of things struck me. One was, I don't know why. They said men were old. How could they know of a mother's needs? Well, maybe they were fathers. That seemed odd to me to say that. Why would they be completely oblivious to a mother if they were old men? That was one thing. And then the other thing, I was just struck by, you know, the Christian tradition is so puritanical. Just to mention the physical mother feeding the child with her breast seems like uh, you would never associate that with Mary in the Christian tradition. It's just not done. She's not a physical person. And this is what you were saying, Anne. She's this godlike thing that to be
Yeah.
devoted to, not to think of as a physical woman.
I would suggest that in the Catholic tradition, especially in Mediterranean countries, that's not much of a problem. That it's a kind of Northern Protestant Puritanism.
Yeah.
It's never complete either, but it is a real problem. It's just that if you take the incarnation seriously, then all the physical things that go with being human are supposed to be part of it.
I
yeah,
think I've seen a medieval. I think it's an Italian painting with Mary nursing the
yeah,
Yeah,
baby, the
yeah,
you'd
child.
expect that.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that.
And also, Williams being a doctor he would know about that,
He would
having
know about it. He would
yeah.
definitely know about it. Yep.
Yeah, I also thought I was struck when I read this poem by the difference, the contrast between this and Eliot's poem about the same subject.
Oh yeah.
Completely different attitude and frame for it. Yeah,
That's a really good point. Think about those two together. Yeah. I mean, I think they're both really beautiful poems, but they're as different as could be. Williams, once again, is like humanizing the whole thing, bringing it back to his real life practice as a baby doctor. And then late in his age when he's struggling with all these both sort of the world seems to be falling to pieces. These are written like not that long after World War II. I mean, that's very much on his mind. The beginning of the nuclear age. But then also his own body with the heart attacks and the strokes and so on. And he's really finding things to affirm, despite, you know, and to set against the dissent, you
I
know?
was I was curious about the devils. They are not figures who normally appear in manger scenes,
Right.
and they bring out the theme of death, which you say is
Yeah.
important, but
Yeah.
it's not a natural juxtaposition.
It's true. It's true. It's true. I wonder if there are some manger scenes with little devils flying away around the edges. I don't know. I'm
Oh my
pretty sure I've
God.
seen manger scenes where Mary's nursing, or not manger scenes so much, but like baby Jesus paintings, Renaissance paintings where she's nursing him. Um, yeah, but anyway, okay, so let's move on to the turtle because one of the things I love about um, William's late poetry and William's, he's a grandpa and he writes these really tender, wonderful poems for his grandchildren. He had two sons, both of whom married. One of the marriages ended in divorce, but there were several grandchildren, both male and female. So the turtle, not because of his eyes, the eyes of a bird, but because he is beaked, bird-like to do an injury, has the turtle attracted you. He is your only pet. When we are together, you talk of nothing else, ascribing all sorts of murderous motives to his least action. You ask me to write a poem. Should I have poems to write about a turtle? The turtle lives in the mud, but is not mud-like. You can tell it by his eyes, which are clear. When he shall escape his present confinement, he will stride about the world, destroying all with his sharp beak. Whatever opposes him in the streets of the city shall go down. Cars will be overturned, and upon his back shall ride to his conquest, my lord, you. You shall be master. In the beginning, there was a great tortoise who supported the world. Upon him, all ultimately rests. Without him, nothing will stand. He is all wise and can outrun the hare. In the night, his eyes carry him to unknown places. He is your friend. I think that is an absolutely magical little poem. It's like I can't think of a better poem for a little boy. It just cracks me up. And it ends so beautifully. Like, he is your friend. I just love it. And of course, referring to the Hindu legend that the world rests upon the back of a turtle, as they say, is turtles all the way down. So comments on this poem, which is like so accessible.
Well, it's also, having a grandson who's about to turn 3, this idea of the all-powerful, this little animal that actually, if it could escape its confines, would literally rule the world, seems very, very appropriate for a young grandson.
That's really cute. Yeah. And the way the little creature, the little boy imagines the little turtle as huge. And then the grandfather is saying, you're going to ride upon his back and rule the world. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, it's so childlike to say he talks of nothing else, ascribing all sorts of murderous motives to his least action, as if the turtle. I mean, that is really well. I don't know, Barry. You're the one with the grandchild. Is that kind of a grandchild type of uh, the ascribing
Absolutely.
murderous motives to him?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, partially because, my grandson is seeing all these movies and cartoons and things where a lot of mayhem unfolds. He's lately started to have these stories where he tells his mom of things that he says, when I was a baby, and then he launches into some imagined account of things that happened when he was a baby and things that animals attacked him and he was able to fend them off and all these adventures that happened. He just presents them full on as if they really happened. I mean, it's really wonderful.
That's
I
so
think I've
funny.
got a couple of grandkids and I've watched them a lot. And I think that, I don't know if it's just boys, but certainly my grandson, he will not take a little car and just play with the car as here's a little car. He will imagine it being something
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah, their storytelling is fascinating, and that they're very creative. The other thing that I think is interesting, and I think more about this with my daughter, is that the sort of when they have these I don't know whether they're anger, murderous instincts or desires to get back at people who are being mean, or think, when they're combined with their usual sort of cheerful spirits, and
Yeah.
they're quite. I remember my daughter got very mad at me about something once, and she was maybe 5, but she was literate. So I find this note stuck to the pillow in the bedroom. You can't come to my birthday party, but you still have to you were bad. You can't come to my birthday party, but you still have to bake a cake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was sort of like, I'm only going to be partially mean, but
I know. Give me the good stuff and stay out of my life. That's really funny. Yeah, my oldest once, she
to
got
see,
really mad at me, and she had made a picture of her best friend swimming in the ocean that I really loved. It was so good, and I put it up on her wall so she could look at it all the time. So she got really mad at me because I expected her to drink her milk for dinner, and she went up to her room and tore up her picture, and she came down. She goes, "This will make you very mad. You'd better come and see."
Very unhappy, I thought she
yes,
said.
you have to be part of the. And I love that he must have spent a time with his grandson, and
Yeah,
understood his grandson's. This is someone who listened to the grandson.
yeah, exactly. I
Was
love it when he says, "You ask me, should I have a poem to write a poem about a turtle?" That's really sweet. So I wanted to give you that, guys, just because I think it's such an absolutely lovable poem and a funny poem. Peter was saying that some of the poems in Pictures from Brooklyn are really funny. Um,
And did he ever? Did the grandson ever comment on this poem? I
oh,
mean,
I don't have any idea.
I,
I
I
don't
I
have any
wondered
idea.
because to have something that's very personal dedicated to you, and um, and then it's out there publicly. You sort of wonder
Yeah,
if there was ever a reaction to it, or we just kept
yeah,
it.
I don't know.
If Paul Mariani knows anything about that, it's probably in his
Yeah,
biography.
it's true. It's true. I have no memory of it, one way or another. Let's take a quick look at the host and then we'll move on to Asphodel and get started with Asphodel and then continue next time. Excuse me. Another poem that has a really strong religious dimension, but it's a poem also about poetry. According to their need, this tall Negro evangelist at a table separate from the rest of his party, these two young Irish nuns, to be described subsequently, and this white-haired Anglican have come witlessly to partake of the host laid for them and for me by the tired waitresses. It is all, since eat we must, made sacred by our common need. The evangelist's assistants are most open in their praise, though covert as would be seemly in such a public place. The nuns are all black, a side view. The cleric, his head bowed to reveal his unruly pole, dines alone. My eyes are restless. The evangelists eat well, fried oysters and whatnot at this railway restaurant. The sisters are soon satisfied. One, on leaving, looking straight before her under steadfast brows, reveals blue eyes. I myself have brown eyes and a milder mouth. There is nothing to eat. Seek it where you will, but of the body of the Lord. The blessed plants in the sea yield it to the imagination intact. And by that force, it becomes real, bitterly to the poor animals who suffer and die that we may live. The well fed evangels, the narrow lipped and bright eyed nuns, the tall white haired Anglican proclaim it by their appetites, as I do also, chomping with my worn out teeth. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. No matter how well they are fed, how daintily they put the food to their lips, it is all according to the imagination. Only the imagination is real. They have imagined it, therefore it is so. Of the evangels with the long legs characteristic of the race, only the docile women of the party smiled at me when with my eyes I accosted them. The nuns, but after all I saw only a young face cut off at the brows. It was a simple story. The cleric, plainly from a good school, interested me more, a man with whom I might carry on a conversation. No one was there save only for the food, which I alone, being a poet, could have given them, but I had only my eyes with which to speak. This is a messy poem, and I don't mean something bad by that. I mean, whereas the turtle, follows a single arc of development, the host is a little bit all over the place. So it takes place in a railway restaurant, such as used to exist, you know, and he's got this cast of characters, almost like in a film, a group of evangelists with their preacher. And, it's mostly women and then the one man, and he's eating at a table separate from them, and the Irish nuns and the white-haired Anglican. They've all come witlessly, in this case, he means unknowingly, to partake of the host laid for them and for me by the tired waitresses. So we got to ask ourselves, what's the host? This is not just the communion wafer, but he's taking the ritual of communion and wanting to apply that, in a sense, backwards. It's like if the original communication of communion in, Christian churches comes from the literal physical act of breaking bread, drinking, eating together, then he's turning this around backwards and saying, okay, all of this ordinary breaking of bread, ordinary drinking of coffee, or drinking beer, whatever, all of that is an act of ritual communion, do you know? And so we're seeing that the host, it's like, who's the host and who's the guest here? Well, everybody is the guest at the communion feast, and the host is life itself. The animals who die for us, the plants that grow, we eat, you know. And so it is all, since we must eat, made sacred by our common need. Um, and then he talks about, I think he's a bit equivocal, like he knows what these clerical people do. They preach, they preach in churches and they have followers, or the nuns teach in a parochial school, or they live in a convent, observe the mass, and so on. But he's kind of asking himself, I think, if they speak, who hears? And then he returns to his theme again of the imagination. No matter how well they're fed, it's all according to the imagination. And he says, only the imagination is real. They have imagined it, therefore it is so. So talking about in a sense, even religion itself, something that we imagine, and therefore it becomes real. But then I, with my worn out teeth, chomping away, he's the poet. And he says, no one was there save for only for the food, which I alone, being a poet, could have given them. But I had only my eyes with which to speak. So I think it's like one of the reasons I like this poem is that it is kind of a messy poem. As I said, it's like it's got these changes of tone from chomping with my worn out teeth, which is just a great line. What is it? Four perfect little fruitcakes? What are you talking about?
Hmm?
Laurel?
Yeah.
What are you talking about with four perfect little fruitcakes?
Well, it's the host in a different form. I asked Otis at the beginning how long to cook four little ones instead of one big one.
Ah.
Otis being the expert on it, told me.
First, I thought you were referring to the poem, and I'm like, who are the four little fruitcakes? Oh, well, whatever. So Otis is a fruitcake maker.
I just
I'm
had
going to be now. I'm going to try this recipe.
Cool. Will you guys send it to me, please?
I send it to everyone
But as an email?
as an email.
Good. Okay. Okay. So comments on this poem.
One thing I would say is that the poem with the title does work backward from the host of the Eucharist, but in a sense, it's not even working backwards because the idea that eating and drinking have something sacred about them or should have something sacred about them is present all through the Hebrew Bible and any number of traditions older than Christianity. So, when Jesus says what he says at the Last Supper, he's drawing on a tradition
Hmm.
that is already an old tradition.
Hmm. Hmm.
It seems as if Williams actually feels that way about everything in life.
Yeah.
Poem about
Yes,
Turtle
he
has
does.
and his thinking about the birth of the baby, that the nursing mother.
Hmm.
So he seems as if, and maybe again, that's part of the deep engagement he has with everyday life, rather more than a lot of poets of the more
Yeah.
classic stripe. So, but I love the description of this very varied group of people,
Hmm.
and,
Hmm. Yeah,
and
me too. And they're not like, talking to each other. They're all in the same place at the same time randomly, and he's watching them. Yeah, I love it too. And these three major faith traditions, evangelical, high church, Episcopalian, and Catholic, and they're all on their own kind of mission, if you like. And then he, as a poet with worn out teeth, chomping away, he says, The Lord is my shepherd. He's on his own kind of mission too. But these late poems are all such powerful affirmations of the imagination. Only the imagination is real. And it's asking us to think, what do we mean by the imagination? You know?
That remark does bother me a little bit. Only the imagination is real. Because I think our experience of life is that we are constantly bumping into things that we have not imagined and find it difficult to imagine, but they're real.
Hmm.
So I think it's a hyperbole.
It is a hyperbole, but he's getting at the way the imagination confers meaning or affirms meaning in life, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Although in this poem, he projects nothing on the characters. In other words, they're
Yes.
there. They're described, but he's not projecting, he's not creating a story around them.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. So and that's why I'm a little challenged about the imagination as well. It's kind of like he's bringing it in, but he's not changing the scene.
Hmm.
Am I making,
Yeah,
Yes.
you're
yeah.
totally right. You're totally right. He's not making up stories about them. He's observing them, you know? So let's stop screen sharing because for us, I like don't want to just be staring at your tiny little faces. So we're going to move on to Asphodel, and I'm just going to read you some. I'm going to sound like an elderly hippie. Go with the flow. Just listen, and then I'll read you some, and then after a while, we'll stop and we'll talk about where we are. Okay? So this poem begun on a hotel napkin in New York City when he was on a little short vacation with Flossie. Its original working title in his mind was The River of Heaven. Eventually it took the title Asphodel, That Greedy Flower, and Douglas has sent us some wonderful, wonderful stuff about the asphodel as a liminal um, emblem, a flower that, grows in hell, but also grows on earth. It's a flower that William saw as a teenager, as he tells us. At one point, his dad, who was a traveling salesman for Florida Water, which is a cologne, was on an extensive trip in South America, and the mom took the two boys to Switzerland and parked them in a boarding school in the Alps, which sounds pretty nice to me. And there, Williams, who loved flowers and plants his whole life, he collected flowers, and as he says, the asphodel among them. So he had like a scrapbook of pressed flowers. And then the information that Doug sent to us, and when Peter pointed out to me that the word acidon means unfading. So this unfading flower that looks like a torch, that looks like a branching candelabra that grows both on the fields, the Elysian fields in hell, and on the actual fields of earth is like this central symbol for this poem. But I want to suggest that the poem is very open, it's very fluid, it's very much enacting processes of thought and feeling. So it's not tightly controlled. It's like it's moving forward, and that's part of what's so beautiful about it is that it keeps coming back like the way thought does, the way memory does, coming back to the same thing, but moving forward to and not able to and not trying to tie everything up. So just feeling its way through something. This poem written at a time of great crisis in William's life, as I've told you, partly because of his own health, which I've mentioned a billion times, partly because he was really, really upset about being denied the Library of Congress poetry position, which was offered to him and then reneged. And I told you about that. It's like this evil woman in Virginia accused him of being a commie. And so the Library of Congress got cold feet and took this honor, which he had really deserved, took it away from him and didn't ever give it back in time. Um, and then partly because if you read Williams from beginning to end, and if you read his stories and his plays and so on, you realize that, adultery it's a theme that runs through his whole life, really. And that's because, you know what? I had a dream last night in which I was teaching Acid and I gave a little talk about adultery and marriage in Williams. I did not actually give it, did I?
No,
No.
no.
Okay, because it was very real. Okay, it was very real. Here's how it works. For Williams, early in his life, in a letter someplace, talks about before he talks about marriage as the absolute stable, necessary grounding of everything in his life. He got married when he was 29 to Flossie Herman, having proposed to her sister and being turned down, and I told you that story. Her sister did not end up marrying his brother. She married somebody else. But Williams married Flossie, and it was a durable marriage. They were married from 1912 to 1963 when he died. But it was a marriage that needed rejuvenating. And for Williams, his way of rejuvenating that marriage was adultery. He thinks of marriage
That'll
as,
do it.
yeah, one way or another. He thinks of marriage as an enclosed garden. He thinks of marriage as a flowering place, a rich place, a beautiful place, but also an enclosed place. And Williams, as we've talked about, was a person of terrific energy, like just terrific amount of energy. And he felt very stultified in the expectations of kind of middle class marriage. So he did have affairs with people, and I don't really know details about much of it. He was he was he was forthright without being forthright, if that makes sense.
No.
Well, you can like he wrote a play called A Dream of Love, in which this doctor drops dead in bed with another woman. And his wife in a dream sequence has to confront this, and the doctor is explaining himself to her so that she will understand why he's committed adultery. It's that kind of thing. And it's a not a good play, but it's a confessional play without being overtly confessional. Okay. And Flossie seems to have not wanted to notice anything about his unfaithfulness for like a really long time.
Was William's father unfaithful to his mother?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, who knows? His father traveled a lot. Williams's mother was strange. She was a visionary. She would commune with the dead at the dinner table, you know. have sort of trances and stuff.
As one does.
Well, I generally do it in the kitchen. Yeah, while I'm stirring the soup. But I mean, Williams is like Williams was a very unusual person who was living a very usual life, if that makes sense.
But
He
he
was living
says
in middle
that
class America. He was a doctor. He was a family man. He was a gardener. He was going to work. He was working harder than like a billion people. He was also extremely unusual person in that, I mean, here he's writing these books, he's paying to get them published. He's trying to foment an artistic revolution in the United States, and he's just if you read Cora in Hell, which I think Douglas you've read, right? His early book of improvisations, he talks about just feeling stuck, just trapped, not trapped by any one thing, but as if life itself was just had him on a short leash.
the thing you said though early when you were talking about him is something you said something like he thought marriage was his rock or
Yeah, he
something like
does.
that. And at the same time, you're describing a guy who's so busy, I wouldn't think he'd have time for affairs. And then somebody who's willing to risk this rock for I don't know whether the affairs were long lasting or serious or whether they were just one night stands, but certainly it sounds like he was risking that rock
Yep.
uh, with regularity. Those things are all very puzzling to me. I
Williams
mean,
is a very puzzling person when you really look at him. He's a very complicated person, you know? I mean, yeah, he's super, super busy. He's writing poems at stoplights. He's, writing poems instead of fixing the bathtub,
I
and he's
always thought that one woman was plenty complicated enough.
yeah, well, luckily for me, Peter does too. And I do my best to be really complicated, you know. But I'm just saying this. This is just something that we have to
Yeah,
fact
no,
about
it's good.
is that Williams thought of, okay, oh no, okay, you're leaving. Okay. You're gonna help have your chimney swept? Okay, Santa Claus. Okay. Well, shoot. Okay. So it's a fact that Williams thought of marriage as a garden, and then he thought of the sea, fluid, uncontrollable, vast, wild. And that is what he associated with desire.
Look, this may be a very prosaic question, but how would he have felt if Flossie had had affairs?
Oh,
And I think if the
Yeah,
answer is he would not have liked it at all, he
yeah.
wants her to be kind of guarding the rock while he goes,
yeah.
does whatever it is he needs to do.
Yeah. But see, the thing about Flossie, as far as I've ever had any sense of her, is she didn't want to have affairs.
Yeah, I get that.
Flossie was stolid. I mean, I'm not trying to be derogatory. Flossie was not a brilliant human being. Williams, a guy thing, bull shit.
Well,
Mhm.
what do you mean bullshit,
Oh, that
Ann?
one. Huh?
Do you mean it's a guy thing, and you mean it's bullshit because women also have affairs?
Yeah,
What did you mean?
that's exactly what I meant.
Okay.
Guys have been saying it's a guy thing since Adam and Eve, or since shortly after. Not since shortly
I mean, who
thereafter.
else was there?
Yeah, but no.
Lilith.
But I mean, Flossie was Flossie in the play. She says, "I don't care as long as I have my garden." You know, she was a homemaker. She was a good homemaker. She was apparently a good cook. She was a good mother. She loved flowers. She did stuff with Williams. They traveled together. She would go to, parties where the artists were and so on. And she wasn't left out, but he just had this whole other billion sides to him, if that
So
makes sense.
somehow it did not affect their relationship was it remained solid.
Well, this is what Asphodel is all about. Everything just fell apart when he became ill. He knew he was going to die at any moment. He had this He was in a mental institution for a couple of months receiving treatment. He just had a complete breakdown. And that's what led to the writing of his poem when he wanted to just completely make himself naked to her. So this is a poem of apology and a poem of affirmation of love in all its guises. I mean, he's not ever saying I was wrong. He's not saying I'm so bad. He's saying I know I've really hurt you. I've hurt you badly. Let me explain to you. Let me speak with you. Let me communicate with you. You know. So I'm just going to read you some and then we'll stop and then we'll pick it up next time. Of asphodel, that greeny flower, like a buttercup upon its branching stem, save that it's green and wooden. I come, my sweet, to sing to you. We lived long together, a life filled, if you will, with flowers, so that I was cheered when I came first to know that there were flowers also in hell. Today I'm filled with the fading memory of those flowers that we both loved, even to this poor, colorless thing. I saw it when I was a child, little prized among the living, but the dead see, asking among themselves, what do I remember that was shaped as this thing is shaped, while our eyes fill with tears of love, abiding love it will be telling, though too weak a wash of crimson colors it to make it wholly credible. There is something urgent I have to say to you, and to you alone, but it must wait while I drink in the joy of your approach, perhaps for the last time. And so, with fear in my heart, I drag it out and keep on talking, for I dare not stop. Listen while I talk on against time. It will not be for long. I have forgot, and yet I see clearly enough something central to the sky which ranges round it. An odor springs from it, a sweetest odor, honeysuckle. And now there comes the buzzing of a bee and a whole flood of sister memories. Only give me time to recall them before I shall speak out. Give me time. So I'm going to end there. But Peter, tell the story of Acid out in when Odysseus goes to the underworld.
Well, there's no story exactly. It's just if by hell you think of the Christian hell in Dante or Milton, there are no flowers there. But in Hades, there are flowers and only asphodel, and there are fields of asphodel in the 11th book of the Odyssey. And the only mention of it that I remember particularly is when Odysseus talks to the shade of Achilles,
Mhm.
and Achilles says, among other things, uh, let me hear no smooth talk of death from you, Odysseus, light of counsels. Better, I say, to break sod for a farmhand for some poor countryman on iron rations than lord it over all the exhausted dead. But they are friends, and Achilles asks him how Achilles' son, Neoptolemus or Pyrrhus, has been doing. And Odysseus says, oh, he did great. You know, he fought bravely and he didn't even get a scratch on him, which is very unusual. And then Homer writes, after he hears that, Achilles leaves. So he went off striding the fields of asphodel,
Yeah, it's a really moving
the
story.
ghost of our great runner, Achilles Iacides, glorying in what I told him of his son.
Yeah, that's a really
So
beautiful
the
story.
asphodel is not focused on, but it's just there. and it's pretty clear that Homer didn't invent it, that this is an old tradition. How it got attached to that particular flower, I have no idea.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a beautiful story though.
And
Um,
Dante takes it from Homer, do you think?
Does he have asphodel in hell? Because I don't remember it.
Oh, I thought you said he
No,
did.
I was saying that in Milton you don't get any flowers at all, and Dante you don't get any flowers at all,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
and in Homer, as you know, of course, it isn't exactly hell. It's the land of the dead, the
Right,
underworld.
mhm.
But it
right.
isn't the Elysian Fields, which presumably have all sorts of things growing there. It's just that underground, shadowy, cold place that still has flowers.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, our numbers are dropping. But any final comments before we leave until after the weekend?
No, that was good.
Keep
Okay, I
going.
will see you guys.
Okay, I won't tell you.
I will see you guys on Tuesday and we'll talk about acid, all that grainy flour. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Yep.